Good morning, everybody. In recent years, the government of Iraq has been working hard to repatriate Iraqi nationals residing in Al-Hol camp in northeast Syria. An area at the time hosted approximately 20,000 Iraqis, now down to about 13,000, predominantly women and children who fled the conflict between 2013 and 2017. The importance of this repatriation is twofold. First of all, the humanitarian and human rights situation in Al-Hol is dire. There's limited water, sanitation, and healthcare. Secondly, ISIS have infiltrated the camp to radicalize and recruit members, often using violent tactics, especially against women and children. Iraq's repatriation process involves rigorous screening to identify and prosecute individuals who have been associated with ISIS, followed by rehabilitation through facilities like the Al-Amal Rehabilitation Center, and subsequent reintegration into communities of origin. To support the Iraqi government with its repatriation efforts, the UN launched the One UN plan earlier this year, which is a coordinated response that includes transitional services, community preparedness, and long-term reintegration strategies. However, significant challenges, as you can imagine, remain. So what do we mean by reintegration? Reintegration here refers to the process in which Iraqis repatriated from Al-Hol moved from camp-based displacement to safe and dignified participation into Iraqi society. This can include legal recognition, access to services, livelihoods, psychosocial recovery, and social acceptance within their communities at a level that's comparable to non-displaced Iraqis. And it's the social acceptance piece that we as an organization are particularly interested in. Perceptions of Iraqi returnees from Syria are mixed, with some communities viewing them with suspicion, linking them to potential extremist activity with Daesh, while others are seen as victims needing support. Many returnees face stigma, threats, and difficulties accessing essential services, while host communities often lack information or resources or unified messaging to support reintegration. The majority are women and children, often returning alone. Female-headed households face greater obstacles to rehabilitation and reintegration, including longer stays in Al-Amal, lower likelihood of returning to original neighborhoods, and more community opposition, threats, and discrimination. Communication gaps between government entities, limited access to reliable information on the process or services they are entitled to, especially women, and reliance on informal information networks further hindered trust and sustainable return. Returnees struggle to access essential services such as healthcare and education and livelihood opportunities, severely limiting their chance for rebuilding their lives. This is amplified by the absence of basic documentation, which restricts their ability to access government services and limits their freedom of movement. So why is reintegration important? Well, if returnees feel excluded and isolated from their communities on return from Syria, there is a real risk of them being re-radicalized or re-recruited by extremist groups. A holistic and human-centered reintegration process that considers the individual and the community to which they are returning is essential for preventing more people from becoming involved in violent extremism. The project that we are exploring today is one component of a broader partnership between the One UN plan, the government of Iraq, and Magenta, with generous support from the EU. Magenta supported this project by leading the development of a government-led communication strategy to support and enhance the government's reintegration efforts. This strategy was developed in collaboration with the government of Iraq, including the Ministry of Migration and Displacement, Ministry of Health and National Security, and other relevant parties. Now, the objectives of the strategy were to increase awareness of the process of return and reintegration in Iraq amongst returnees, and to reduce stigma of returnees and promote community acceptance of returnees. So to understand exactly what types of interventions and messaging would work for different groups involved in the reintegration process, Magenta conducted formative research. Broadly speaking, the research aimed to, 1, provide evidence on the current situation from a variety of perspectives to decide on what type of interventions would be needed and effective, and 2, to understand what type of messaging is going to resonate with different community members. We had a number of research questions, such as, how does the reintegration process take place, and what are the services offered along the way? What are the main barriers and supporting factors to reintegration? What should returnees know for effective reintegration? We wanted to know what are the current available communication channels with returnees, and what are the challenges facing effectively communicating with returnees. We also wanted to understand what the rumors were that hindered return and reintegration that might need to be countered. The research was scaffolded by the behavioral drivers model. This is a well-established social and behavioral change framework which looks at the psychological, sociological, and environmental factors that drive behavior. This model enabled us to go beyond individual knowledge or attitudes and look at the broader ecosystem, look at motivations, habits, norms, expectations, and enabling environments that all influence behavior. An initial literature review enabled us to answer some of those questions and identify gaps for exploration in the following interviews. In total, we conducted 22 interviews. We interviewed community leaders, members of the receiving community, returnees, camp staff, international partners, and Iraqi officials. This list was developed to ensure a diverse spectrum of perspectives and roles. What we found was a few things. We found that reintegration, of course, is happening across Iraq, but it is inconsistent and fragile. Formal return processes exist, but they differ from one region to another, heavily shaped by local politics and tribal mediation. Mistrust remains a defining challenge. Long-standing grievances, complicated bureaucratic processes, and weak coordination across institutions have eroded confidence in government systems. Community acceptance is also uneven. Where tribal or religious leaders actively support reconciliation, reintegration succeeds. Where they don't, returnees often feel isolated and feel hostility. So while the structures are there, trust, clarity, and coordination can, of course, be strengthened. We also found across all consultations, people told us that informal channels, including tribal leaders, personal contacts, and social networks, are their first and sometimes only source of information about how to return. Unfortunately, official communication at that time was lagging. Gaps in outreach, inconsistent messaging, and lack of materials in local languages had allowed rumors and misinformation to thrive. This impacted women hardest. Restricted mobility and male-dominated communication mean that women, especially widows and female heads of household, often receive information late or sometimes not at all. Children too face stigma. Many returnee kids were bullied or excluded at school. In short, informal networks fill the void left by official systems, but they often reinforced exclusion rather than inclusion. Despite these challenges, we found strong evidence that locally led dialogue can make a difference. When tribal and religious figures frame reintegration around forgiveness, coexistence, and shared identity, community acceptance improves dramatically. Initiatives that combine psychological and livelihood support with empathetic, human-centered communication are proving particularly powerful. What's needed now is structure, stronger coordination between ministries, local councils, and civil society, and proper monitoring to sustain those early gains. The findings of the research underscored how trust must be built, not broadcast, and that happens through dialogue, not directives. Based on the findings of the research, and in line with the government of Iraq's counter-violent extremism approach as presented by Ali Abdullah al-Badayr yesterday, Magenta piloted 2 community interventions that were included as part of the broader social and behavioral change strategy. The first was a communal iftar hosted by a local tribal sheikh and attended by over 20 families. Here, food was prepared at home by families and shared collectively to foster a relaxed, inclusive environment. The meal was followed by a storytelling session where participants shared experiences of displacement, return, and reconciliation, and space for community leaders to deliver messages of forgiveness, coexistence, and rejecting violence. The testimonials captured a narrative of forgetting the past and moving forward, and demonstrated shifting attitudes. One participant said, "We have overcome this issue and become one family living together in peace." Another said, "The past is now in the past." A second pilot was a community football tournament featuring 4 mixed teams of returnees and host community members, and side games like Al-Mahaybis and a children's football challenge. Hundreds of residents, including tribal leaders and local officials, attended, with community members playing a key role in mobilizing attendance. Like the communal iftar, a narrative of looking to the future prevailed, and participants expressed the unity and inclusion that they experienced. One participant said, "We played together, won together, and laughed together." Another said, "This is a message to other areas. Let go of the past, forgive, and live in peace." Thank you very much for your time. For those of you who are interested, a full documentary on those interventions can be found on this QR code, and please feel free to reach out to me for more information. Thank you.